When Warner Bros. Hired Joss Whedon to finish Zack Snyder's Justice League in 2017, it was supposed to be a rescue mission. Snyder had stepped away from the project following a family tragedy, and Whedon, riding high from directing two box office shattering Avengers films for Marvel, seemed like the perfect choice to deliver a more accessible, audience-pleasing superhero film. Instead, what followed was one of the most spectacular professional implosions in modern Hollywood. Whedon not only failed to save Justice League, he torched his reputation, alienated cast members, and ignited a string of exposés and allegations that culminated in his near-complete exile from the film industry. So how did he do it? To find out what went wrong, let's take a look at how Justice League destroyed Joss Whedon's career. Whedon's early career started off with an impressive bang, with his breakout series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, redefining what genre television could look like. Blending horror, drama, and witty banter, Buffy starred a charismatic, empowered heroine who battled both supernatural demons and high school angst. It was here that Whedon developed the quippy dialogue that he would one day become known for. He followed Buffy with Angel, a spin-off with a slightly darker tone, and then Firefly, a Star Wars-influenced space western that, despite its short run, it became a cult hit among sci-fi fanatics. Whedon became especially noted for creating what were considered at the time strong female characters, independent, capable women who could hold themselves in a fight and hold their own with their male counterparts. At the time, this was seen as a feminist achievement, and it earned him accolades from both fans and critics. By the time Marvel and Disney were looking for someone to helm the Avengers, Whedon had proved himself to be an obvious choice, as a master at juggling ensemble casts and injecting levity into high-stakes narratives. His ability to balance action with character-driven humor helped turn the Avengers into a cultural event and box office juggernaut, the ripples of which are still being felt today. In the wake of Marvel's massive success with the Avengers and the wider MCU, Warner Bros. Wanted their own interconnected superhero universe featuring their own characters. Pre-100 director Zack Snyder was chosen to spearhead the creative direction of what would become the DCEU. To distinguish this new universe from the MCU, Snyder's vision was darker, more operatic, and more mythological than Marvel's quippy, brighter, crowd-pleasing fare. However, after Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice received mixed reviews and underperformed at the box office, Warner Bros. Grew uneasy with Snyder's creative vision. With production of Justice League underway, DC's first major team-up film, executives began pressuring Snyder to steer towards a lighter, more humorous tone similar to the Avengers, and would even hire Joss Whedon, writer and director of the Avengers, to rewrite the script. Snyder, tired from battling to maintain his vision and also dealing with a family tragedy, decided to step away, as Whedon would take over the project completely. Whedon rewrote substantial portions of the script, shot new scenes for the movie, and dramatically shifted the overall style, tone, and direction of the film. Among his decisions was to make the final battle more relatable to audiences, by including the now infamous Russian family hiding in their house. However, that entire storyline would be criticized for feeling like it was shoehorned into the film. Whedon also added a lot more humor into the script, the most juvenile being a moment where the Flash lands face first into Wonder Woman's cleavage, a gag Whedon had already used before in Age of Ultron between Bruce and Natasha. One of the most glaring areas of change was Superman. Nearly all of the Man of Steel scenes in Whedon's cut were reshot or reworked. The result was an awkward and often jarring performance from Henry Cavill, who had grown a thick, bushy mustache for his role in Mission Impossible Fallout, which he was filming at the same time as Whedon's reshoots, meaning the mustache had to be digitally removed frame by frame. This decision became a running joke online, and emblematic of the splash dash quality of the reshoots. It's impossible not to notice the strange shape of Cavill's upper lip in the reshot scenes, most notably the opening iPhone footage of Superman talking to a fan. Whedon also removed all appearances of the looming villain Darkseid, who featured prominently in Snyder's original cut. Though his presence wasn't significant, it was consistently felt looming over the heroes as an oncoming threat to prepare for, much like Thanos in the original Avengers. Whedon's cut erased this greater narrative arc, turning Steppenwolf into a generic villain. Whedon also added an additional post-credits scene, in which Superman and the Flash compete in a lighthearted race. This scene preceded Snyder's intended post-credits scene, a much more ominous Batman solo movie tease with Lex Luthor telling Deathstroke that Bruce Wayne is Batman. The tonal whiplash between these scenes symbolizes the larger identity crisis plaguing the film. Whedon's approach clashed so dramatically with Snyder's original vision that the finished film felt like two incompatible movies fused together. But worst of all, for Warner Bros., Whedon didn't save the movie. A studio executive is reported to have said, "When we got to see what Joss actually did, it was stupefying. The robber on the rooftop, so goofy and awful. The Russian family, so useless and pointless." Everyone knew it. It was so awkward because nobody wanted to admit what a piece of crap it was. The critical reception was equally damning, and with production costs having massively exploded through the excessive reshoots, Justice League failed to break even financially, forcing Warner Brothers to reassess their entire approach to the DCU. Planned sequels and spin-offs were shelved or delayed, and the studio's ambitions for a tightly connected cinematic universe began to unravel. And if the poor reception wasn't enough to begin the downfall of Whedon's reputation, it wasn't long before stories from behind the scenes began leaking. Cyborg actor Ray Fisher had the most public falling out with Whedon, accusing him of stripping Cyborg's role of all its depth and importance, essentially erasing the film's only black character, as many of his scenes were left on the cutting room floor. Fisher then followed this up by accusing the director of gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable behavior on set, sparking an internal investigation at Warner Brothers. The rest of the cast members also voiced solidarity with Fisher, with Jason Momoa posting to Instagram that serious stuff went down, and it needs to be investigated. Gal Gadot would later come forward with similar allegations. After raising concerns to Whedon about Wonder Woman's portrayal, she was met with aggression. When she tried to address his toxic attitude, she said, "He kind of threatened my career, and said if I did something, he would make my career miserable." Even Ben Affleck was significantly affected by the turbulent production. Already grappling with personal issues, Affleck's experience on set only exacerbated his struggles with alcoholism, later saying that the movie was the worst experience of his career, and led to him dropping out of writing, directing, and also starring in a solo film about Batman. In the wake of these revelations, the house of cards that was Whedon's professional image began to collapse. Following the accusations from the Justice League cast, Whedon's ex-wife, Kai Cole, published a scathing open letter, accusing him of hypocrisy and infidelity during their marriage. She claimed that Whedon had portrayed himself as a feminist icon, while cheating on her for years with multiple actresses and co-workers, saying he's not who he pretends to be. By this point, the floodgates were open, with more reports of Whedon's past behavior surfacing. Buffy actress Charisma Carpenter accused Whedon of verbal abuse and manipulation, particularly during her pregnancy. Carpenter alleged that Whedon called her fat and questioned her decision to have a child. Carpenter's co-stars Amanda Benson and Michelle Trachtenberg supported Carpenter's claims, describing the set as a toxic environment, with Michelle adding that Whedon's behavior was so problematic she was not allowed to be alone with him. Whedon's past work began to face renewed scrutiny in this context, especially his unproduced Wonder Woman screenplay from the mid-2000s, which blatantly objectified its lead and sidelined her in favor of Steve Trevor. Diana is first introduced as the girl, not Diana, not the woman, just the girl, a telling choice that sets the tone for how her character is handled throughout. Rather than portraying her as noble or compassionate, Diana comes off as arrogant, naive, and frequently unlikable, as she's mocked, dismissed, and routinely disrespected by the men around her. Steve, meanwhile, is positioned as both the emotional core and true protagonist of the story. He constantly undermines Diana, patronizing her, challenging her beliefs, and outright insulting her. This pattern of diminishing female characters wasn't limited to Wonder Woman. In Avengers Age of Ultron, Whedon reduced Black Widow's arc to her inability to have children, defining her trauma by her fertility and relegating her role in the story to being Bruce Banner's caretaker and love interest. After all these revelations about his behavior, combined with public scrutiny of the work for which he used to be celebrated, Whedon's reputation began to crumble. For his next project, Whedon had created a sci-fi series for HBO called The Nevers, for which he was also set to be showrunner. However, HBO quickly dropped him from the production, claiming it was due to COVID complications, though that excuse seems convenient given the mounting controversies. When The Nevers finally aired, Whedon's name was conspicuously absent from much of the promotion. In 2022, Whedon attempted to defend himself in a New York Magazine profile, but the piece only deepened the controversy. He flippantly dismissed the Justice League cast accusations, saying, "I don't threaten people. Who does that?" and even suggested that his main problem with Fisher was simply that he was a bad actor. It was a tone-deaf attempt at self-redemption that only underscored his dramatic fall from grace. Meanwhile, fans had rallied behind Zack Snyder, seeing his creative vision as having been steamrolled by Joss Whedon's generic and misogynist approach. The release the Snyder Cut movement grew into an online juggernaut, eventually convincing Warner Brothers to release Snyder's version of the film. The 4-hour epic received a warmer reception than Whedon's version, and for many, served as vindication for both Snyder and the mistreated cast. Warner Brothers, for their part, tried to distance themselves from the controversy, but their original decision to push Snyder out and install Whedon remains one of the most short-sighted studio decisions in recent memory. Executives believed that Whedon's Marvel pedigree would ensure success. Instead, it led to disaster. As of 2025, Whedon has no new projects lined up. He remains absent from the industry's major stages, his name now more associated with scandal than storytelling. Justice League may have been his last major credit, a fittingly ironic end for someone once seen as the savior of superhero cinema. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of Hollywood's untold stories and unmade movies.